Hey, Foreclosure Fix family, and welcome to another episode of the Foreclosure Fix podcast, where our goal is to help 1 million homeowners successfully navigate foreclosure. Now, if that mission resonates with you, please do us a favor, like, subscribe, or share the podcast with someone who you know it can help. Or better yet, get them a copy of our new book, The Foreclosure Fix, 12 Proven Steps to Beat the Bank, Escape Foreclosure, and Turn Your Property into a Profitable Asset. I'm your host, DJ Olojo, and in today's episode, I am talking all things real estate, short sale, and helping homeowners facing foreclosure with my guest, Judy Casad. Judy, welcome to the podcast. How you doing today?
Doing great, DJ. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being on. And y'all are in for a treat today because Judy is a licensed realtor. She's a broker. She has been doing real estate for over 20 years and is really phenomenal. She's out of the Oregon area, and y'all, she has some secrets for y'all that are going to be phenomenal. The biggest thing, and one thing I want to point out, is that she used to be a hairdresser. And so she has all the tea and knows all the stories. And so we're going to dive into that today. So Judy, do us a favor and let our listeners know how you interact with people who may be facing foreclosure or facing financial pressures.
Well, I'm happy to share one of my most heartfelt thing to do with my career as a real estate broker is I deal with people. As a hair designer, I dealt with people one-on-one for many, many years. And as an educator, industry educator, I have the skills of teaching and talking in front of a group of people. But part of that is the education that I bring to these folks and my heartfelt feeling for folks that are challenged with their financial situation where they might possibly lose their home investment. These homeowners have worked their whole life to get a home. And if they get into a position where they're forced to let it go, it's a very challenging and emotional time in their lives. So what I do for them is I help them by listening to their situation, help find solutions for them that they can consider, options that they consider to possibly save their home. And if that can't happen, then we work on the strategies that are available to walk them through the process of their next move out of their home and into a newer home.
So our most recent podcast was talking about 4 ways that you can sell your house if you're facing foreclosure. And one of those ways is utilizing a real estate broker. And you as a broker, you as someone who has worked with numerous people who are facing a tough decision on what to do with their house. What are some of the things that homeowners should be thinking about if they are kind of at their wits' end and having foreclosure issues as they consider selling?
Well, I could list about 10 strategies for homeowners to follow. And one of the first things, of course, is to stay calm, seek advice. There's your lender is the first person to talk to and see if maybe they can refinance their mortgage so that they can make their payments more affordable. That would be one step. If that's not possible, then there's possible government access to some government programs that might assist them. That's another one. Review their finances, see if they can't get a loan that could consolidate their debt so that their loan debts are not as large and they can minimize it and make their mortgage, maybe their mortgage is a little bit smaller, and buy them some time to sell it. And if they can sell their home before they get to the point where the bank takes it on or the sheriff comes and says, you got to move out, we don't want to get to that point. So it's very important to talk to a real estate agent or even an attorney possibly to prevent, the harder parts of what a foreclosure could be.
No, Judy, those are great points that you mentioned. And I'm wondering if you wrote my book or if I wrote the book, because you're just taking it right from there, right? And so you're highlighting a lot of those things, right? But let's rewind a little bit, because we always talk about on this podcast, when homeowners are facing foreclosure, one of the biggest things you can do to help yourself is make a decision. Do you want to keep your house or do you want to sell the house? Because if you stand in the middle of that juxtaposition, in that space of indecision, you find yourself in a really tough spot and nothing's happening. You kind of just are like a hamster on a wheel. You're going round and round and round and round. And so what you mentioned about looking for government programs and considering what options you have available is so important for homeowners who may find themselves just at their wits' end. But I want to go back a little bit because I want to know more about like when you were a hairdresser and people come in and, they're a captive audience. They're in your chair for hours at a time. People don't like talking about their financial situation, but what ways have you seen people kind of let down their guard to be able to ask people for help and be able to share personal things about themselves with other people in a non kind of confrontational or a way that just lets them in?
Well, that's a good question. I think that a lot of times folks go to the hairdresser to just sit back and get away from all their troubles and be pampered. So it's a time where they can sit and feel good and look in the mirror again going, hey, I just did that the other day. It's like, oh, I'm so glad I got my hair done. I can look in the mirror and I'm not cringing anymore at those roots. But,
Well, I have that same problem, as you can tell.
So, they don't always share those hardship things that happen in their lives. But if they were to, then, there are times when they will let down. And that's when you just, you feel for them. And if, as a hairdresser, I have many different types of career folks in my chair where I can have access to attorneys or realtors or folks that I could send them to seek help. Because as a hairdresser, I wasn't trained in any of that other than, just the heartfelt chatting away. So definitely it's good to have those tools in your pocket to send the folks to where they can get help in a professional manner.
That's a very good point that you make, is that oftentimes we who maybe listen to this podcast or we who interact with folks who we know need help don't have the answers. We don't have the solutions, but we know someone needs something from us or they need to get to a better space. And sometimes just being able to refer them in the right direction, point them in the right direction is so helpful to helping them move along their journey. Another thing, Judy, that I know you specialize in, that you've done work in, are working with people who are a little bit older. And I don't want to use the term senior because, I don't think you're a senior until, you are much, much, much older. But those folks who may be eligible for Social Security or close to it, and when they face financial issues and they're considering their next move or their best move. And I know you talk a lot about this on your podcast, Homeowners Best Move podcast, and talking about what they can do to best put themselves in the best position concerning their home. You talked about a lot of people maybe want to move close to their kids, may want to downsize. So help our listeners understand what they should be considering if they are in that situation where they're older, they don't need a house.
So what I can say is to our listeners out there who have elderly folks, and to those of you who are in your elderly years from 70 to 90-ish, and your faculties are starting to decline, that's a point in your life when you should be transitioning from your home into potentially assisted living, which is not a hospital. It's not nursing care. It's a place where you can have somebody make sure you get your meds in on time and take care of your household needs so you can relax and play and mingle with other folks that are in your age range, that you can listen to the same era of music and have a lot more fun activities available. So those are things that you want to look at. Now, another thing, my podcast, Homeowners Best Real Estate Moves. In that podcast, I have an episode where I interviewed a gentleman that helps seniors who need assistance financially to make those kinds of moves. And so I can't remember the actual podcast. I think it's 67 or something like that, number 67. But it's about assistance for the senior adults. And it doesn't necessarily have to be financial, but he does have financial opportunities for them as well, which is something good to prevent foreclosure. If you have to sell your home but don't have enough money to afford to live in a memory care facility, which is a lockdown for folks because it's security. You don't want them to walk out and in the middle of the night when their memory's gone and they think they're going to work or something So there's lots of opportunities to get care out there and assistance financially for senior adults. And the hardest emotional part of that is the realization of the reality that our folks or ourselves are needing that care. And when we have our home for many, many years, we should have equity, but not always possible for everybody. So it's good to know that there is financial assistance out there so you can prevent a foreclosure. And should that happen, that's when, again, these podcast episodes are out there to help these folks to learn what they can do. Because I mean, when I was a hairdresser, I didn't know anything about real estate when it came to the furnace or plumbing or, different things. So not everybody has the skills to know how to get out of their situation financially.
Yeah, we'll be sure to make sure we link to your podcast and link to that episode specifically. So for our listeners who want to check out that episode, we'll send a link in the bio and in the description. Excellent. I agree with you 100% as it pertains to the emotional weight and strain of folks who are still in their good mental faculty, but the realization like they can't do everything they used to do, especially when they were the matriarchs of the family or the breadwinners or things like that. It's very interesting kind of to see that process play out. And it's tough for people who find themselves in that situation, whether it's they have to give up control or if they find themselves in a situation that is more challenging and more difficult because they don't have enough finances to be able to support themselves anymore.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Well, you have done some work with some short sales in your career. And, short sales are one of those things that are coming back in style right now. And I say coming back in style because we are getting to that point where although homeowners have more equity, some find them still underwater because of liens, fees, and all these other things. And so you've done some short sales in your career, and homeowners may come to you for that in a time of need. So help us understand what that process looks like, and also what are the kind of benefits of a short sale for homeowners who may be facing foreclosure and need to get out.
So when I was preparing for this episode interview, I realized that my very first listing was a short sale. And it was in my neighborhood, and the owners were out of town. They lived in California, and we're up here in Oregon. And the seller wanted to have a certain price. Let's just say $350. He wanted $350 for this house. It was on the market and it sat there for a while and it wasn't selling. But this gentleman, he was in hospice. He needed to get it sold and he didn't want to lower the price. And so we lowered the price. We still didn't get activity. We lowered it again. And finally, we got to the point where I had to talk to the lender, his mortgage lender, and say, look, we're in a position here where we need to sell this house. We've got an offer on the table now, but it's a lot less. It's going to be a short sale. And they accepted it. And the seller decided that he just had to do it. He had to let go. So we ended up selling a short sale just to get out of it. And again, he was in hospice, so he had no choice. And he wanted to make sure it was taken care of before he passed and left it to his family to deal with. So that was the first short sale. Actually, that's the only short sale I've done in my career so far. But I did have another interesting thing happen, but I'm going to save that for later.
Oh, yeah. You got to share the juicy details. So coming up. But that is a phenomenal transition because that brings me to my favorite part of the podcast, which is our bow tie round. And it's where our listeners get to tie one on with our guest, Judy, and really talk about some of the things that are really, really important on this podcast. And so the B in bow tie stands for your best advice for someone facing foreclosure. The O stands for one thing you're grateful for. And the W stands for your wildest or most interesting foreclosure related story. All right. So Judy, what is your B? What is your best advice for someone facing foreclosure?
Well, education is the key to your financial future. I recommend for the folks who are listening to get a copy of your book, DJ, and listen to my podcast, Homeowners Best Real Estate Moves, because there's categories that they can listen to that can resonate with their current lifestyle. And you have this episode, and I'll be having another episode on foreclosures as well to give them some more insight as to what they can do and learn. So that's my recommendation. Of course, I've got a lot more, but they can get in touch.
Awesome. The next thing is one thing you are grateful for right now.
I'm truly grateful for the support of my affiliation with Windermere Real Estate because we receive weekly reports on the market and outstanding support and education. The team spirit amongst our brokers is very strong and comforting because I can go to them when I have a challenge with a client who is facing foreclosure, say, and I'm stuck with how do we deal through this scenario. I can go to our office and there's people that have gone through it and learn from them and help my client by having that connection. So I'm very grateful to have a good support team behind me.
Awesome. And your wildest or most interesting foreclosure related story?
All right. Two things. One, real quick, I got close to a foreclosure one time. In a relationship breakup, I borrowed money from my father to buy out my partner. And then I paid my father back with interest over the years. So I could have lost my property, but I found a way to borrow from family and make it to where I could continue on. So that was good. My current experience that comes to close to foreclosure is a listing agreement with a company that is managing a bank-owned property. So I listed this property several years ago that had a manufactured home on it. The buyer was a young man who after closing experienced 2 house fires. The rumor going around at the time say that he wanted insurance to pay out to remove the home so he could build a cabin. Now, it's not proven that the fires were set intentionally, but there was a lot of suspicion. But in September of 2020, here in our neighborhood, we experienced a wildfire that devastated the Blue River community of the Mackenzie River Valley between Eugene and Bend, Oregon. It was a complete meltdown of the business section. I mean, pools of melted metal on the ground from car tire rims. I mean, it was down to the ground. Crazy. Truly devastating. This particular home was leveled in the fire. Unfortunately, the man he was not able to recover his property and rebuild. And it's quite possible due to the many insurance claims. So the bank acquired ownership. I was not part of the bank and default of the property owner transactions. But since I lived 2 miles away from the property, I was hired by a company who oversees the build site developments. I am required to send in reports, and it's been 9 months. It's taking a while in our area to get the site developed, but the property still has piles of debris. They did pour a foundation and a well house foundation. But as a realtor, my challenge is that I receive daily requests for uploading a progress report daily. And there's nothing to report. It's been 9 months with very little activity. So I live 3 minutes away. I can go I literally just go once a month to check on it and take photos, and they have to be time-stamped photos and upload them into a website and enter a lengthy report. So as a realtor, we do a lot of things for folks. And in time, my crazy story and my efforts will eventually make a homeowner happy. That is my ultimate goal. I feel a feel-good finale to closing on a sale for a happy homeowner.
Well, that is a great story, Judy. And I say it's a great story because oftentimes we hear stories about people who are going in foreclosure or escaping foreclosure. And you kind of gave us a 2-for-1 because you told us how you escaped your own foreclosure. And now you're telling us how you're going to help someone else be a happy homeowner and working with the actual bank to put a new house there. And so, Judy, we are so grateful for having you on our podcast today and for you bringing this good knowledge to our listeners.
Thank you for having me.
Please do us a favor and let our listeners know how to get in contact with you, how to follow your journey, and how to get access to your podcast.
Sure. You can find me on my website is judycasad.com, Judy, Judy, Casad, Casad. And my website is Homeowners Best Real Estate Moves. So you can find me through the website, the podcast. And my email is easy, Judy at Windermere. Well, Windermere, WINDERMERE.com. Judy at Windermere.com. My phone number, 541-968-2400.
Yeah. If you are in that Oregon area and you want a phenomenal realtor, broker, and just all around good person, and if you're really lucky, she may do your hair. Definitely reach out to Judy. She's really good at what she does, and she has a big heart and a great mission, and she's doing phenomenal work in that area. That ends another episode of the Foreclosure Fix podcast. Y'all, the goal is simple, but I need your help. To help 1 million homeowners navigate foreclosure, I can't do it by myself. I need you. So please, if you know someone who is facing foreclosure, share our content, get them a copy of the book, leave us a review, do something to help the mission go forward. We will be forever grateful. And thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Foreclosure Fix podcast. I love you and God bless you. The views and opinions on this podcast are for informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice. If you have a specific legal question, we highly recommend you contact a qualified legal professional.